Hey, good afternoon, Cierra. Welcome. I want to welcome everyone who's joining in on this session. If you've been waiting for the meeting to start, I apologize. We were using this room for our keynote address, so the keynote just ended, so I could come in and open up the room for session 3. This is an art gallery presentation, and we have 2 amazing presenters for you this afternoon. So I want to welcome you all. So Cierra and Denise, I see Denise has joined us, so welcome everybody. And again, I apologize if people were waiting to kind of come into the room. We were using this room for our keynote address, so if you were at the keynote, it was very engaging, very important work that Christine does for the homeless population in Philadelphia and Pennsylvania. But I'm really excited to get this session underway in a few minutes. So welcome everybody. And if Cierra and Denise can just let me know that you can hear me and you're with me, that would be awesome.
I can hear you. I'm just trying to.
No worries. What about you, Cierra? Are you with me?
I'm here. I just logged in.
Okie dokie.
Hello, Professor Adela.
Hello. So nice to have you guys with us today. So there was a little bit of a change in the program. There's only going to be Cierra and Denise. Okay, Bryanna is not making her presentation. So what we will do is we'll get started in a few minutes, and you guys can talk for as long as you need, and hopefully we can have a have some conversation about the role of art and your pieces and the greater context of your work today. All right. So welcome everyone once again. We'll get started in just a minute. So good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to session 3 of the NRHC 2021 virtual conference. It's a pleasure to have you all with us. This session is an art gallery panel entitled Societal Matters Through Varying Mediums. We have 2 amazing presenters for you today. Denise Daniels from Bloomfield College, who will be presenting on her piece entitled Coaster Bus, and Cierra Moranti from Monroe College, and her piece is entitled Liberty is the Root of Prosperity. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the floor over to both of you ladies in that order. So Denise will present first, and then Cierra will get a chance to talk. And what we'll do is you can talk for as long as you need to. We're only 2 presenters. We have an hour and 15 minutes, so there's plenty of time. But what I'd encourage the people who are in the audience to do is to make sure that you use the chat to ask your questions. And then after the formal remarks are done, we can kind of open it up and have more conversation between presentations. So with that being said, let me just make sure that everything looks like all the sharing options are on. So Denise, you can share your screen whenever you're ready. And I can see it. And you have the floor.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I can see you. I can see your screen.
Great. Hi, everyone. My name is Denise Daniels. I'm currently a senior at Bloomfield College studying computer science and minoring in game programming. So my project is a little bit unconventional. It's not really an art piece, but it's a digital game. Let me just see. Okay, great. So I created this project called Coaster Bus in my digital game design class for an honors project. And when talking with my mentor, I wanted to explore what it was like creating a project that involved everything. So meaning I would have done the programming, I would have done the art, I would have done the music, I've done all the UI. All the previous projects, I've kind of just worked as a programmer. I didn't really have any experience doing art or music, and I wanted to kind of challenge myself. And of course, now when creating a game, you have to come up with an idea. So I've always been interested in making a game based on coaster buses, which is what you see on the picture on the right, which is 2 coaster buses, yellow Jamaican colors, a Jamaican flag that's right behind me. Yes. And yeah, so I wanted to create a game on coaster buses. And so coaster bus is like one of those popular modes of transportation. So other than like regular buses that, the regular New York buses, we also have these coaster buses. And they're kind of known for weaving through traffic, trying to fit through spaces. Like if I'm driving, the coaster bus is like right there beside me, like trying to, cut through, trying to make sure that they can beat everyone to the stoplight. They're always overtaking, they're always speeding. And I kind of wanted to touch on why that's kind of like become a norm. Like to me, if I see that happening, it's like, okay, it's happening, whatever, and it shouldn't be that way. It should be more like, if I see that happening, I want to know that, hey, someone is there to make sure that they're enforcing the policies and the laws of the road. And we've kind of taken it to something normal, and we're not really trying to stop it, I guess. And of course, coastal buses are not the only type of transportation that's doing it. Us regular drivers, we're doing the same thing. Taxis are doing the same thing. And I wanted to address that. And I hope that this game will, when someone plays the game and they see a yellow bus, jumping over different obstacles, they're like, hey, why is this yellow bus jumping over this garbage bin? Or why is it blowing away a police officer? I guess, I will get into more details on what the game actually encompasses of, but in one part, the coastal bus is able to blow away a police officer, kind of showing that, the coastal bus drivers don't really care, they're kind of like, oh, I'm just pushing away the police officer, whatever. And I'm hoping this will be, even though it's like a fun game and, you're doing stuff, it's kind of a hope that will start a conversation like, I wonder why this is happening. And it highlights the road and safety issues that exist in Jamaica. And, road and safety issues are very serious in the United States as well. Speeding, accidents, serious injuries, that's always a big topic in the US. So I'm gonna play a little commercial kind of video of the game that kind of explain the whole process of the development and what the game actually encompasses of. And just let me know if you can hear it. Welcome to Coastal Bus, developed by Denise Daniels. Coastal Bus is a 2D infinite runner game which highlights one of Jamaica's most popular forms of transportation, the coastal bus. Created using Construct 2, Vector, Adobe Illustrator, Piskel, Boscasio, and Google Fonts, Coastal Bus utilizes a game engine and a variety of art, design, and music creation software for its development. Let's look at the development process. Firstly, a mood board was created. We cannot create a game without forming some ideas. This mood board features images of Jamaica showing scenery, coastal buses, and taxis. Images of other background elements and cartoons were also collected to stimulate ideas for players, obstacles, and background elements. Now, we cannot have a game without some art and design elements. Using Adobe Illustrator, Piskel, and Vector, players, obstacles, and background elements were created. These included animated objects such as the coastal bus, the policeman, the garbage bin, and much more. Now, who doesn't love music? Coastal Bus has 2 original music tracks featured on the home screen and the gameplay screen. Coastal Bus also utilizes sound effects. It is super upbeat and will get you to want to continue playing. Finally, with all the elements we need, it was time to build. Every game starts from somewhere. Image 1 shows an initial prototype with simple shapes. As the game development process progressed, game assets were added, resulting in the final version shown in image 4. Now, let's play. Coastal Bus features a home screen with detailed instructions on how to play and a button to review the credits. The up arrow is to jump and the spacebar is to blow away the police officers. It also showcases your best high score in the game overall. The gameplay screen loads your player, a yellow coastal bus ready to dodge everyone and anything in its way. The aim is to survive as long as you can, jumping over obstacles and getting rid of the police. The longer you survive, the higher the distance you travel, or the further distance you travel. That determines your high score. There's a guess level bar that decreases each time you hit an obstacle. If that guess level reaches 0, it's game over. While fun and comical, Coastal Bus highlights the road culture that exists in Jamaica today. and touches on the issue of road traffic safety. Road safety is an important issue in the United States. It is in hopes that Coastal Bus brings awareness to the lack of concern many people exhibit towards improper and unsafe driving behavior. It is also in hopes that it will start a conversation on possible solutions to mitigate this issue. Play Coastal Bus today, available on h.io. Okay, so that was my little video on what the game is, and I'm gonna play the game for approximately 2 minutes and just kind of go through like the different game elements. So let's play. Now, this is not the most updated version, but it still works and it's still good, and it kind of goes through everything. Just let me know if you can hear the music. Perfect. So, of course, as I mentioned before, we have a gas level that moves down each time you hit an object, and you have to use the up arrow to go over the garbage bin, and it also has the distance. The longer you travel, the higher your distance, and therefore you can, kind of see your high score each time. Also, there's perfect jump. So if you miss, and as you can see, I'm not the best player. I'm talking while I'm trying to play the game. But yeah, so you can jump with the taxis and you can the police officer. So eventually, as you keep going, it's gonna get harder. More objects are gonna come. And you can hear also the sound Now, if you keep playing and you get high score, also, you get to actually show what your high score is. And that's essentially what the game is for. And it's also available on h.io. I can send the link So yes, Coaster Bus is a 2D infinite runner game that allows you to jump over different objects, and it's in hopes that it will start a conversation on like road safety and traffic issues. Even though it's really fun, you kind of want to, you're probably going to question, hey, why is this yellow bus jumping over garbage bins? Why is it jumping over taxis? Why is it trying to blow away the police officers? And road safety is a very serious issue, and I'm hoping that people will also take it seriously. So not only that they follow the rules themselves, they also preach to other people to ensure that they're also following the rules and making sure everyone is safe. So yes, that is Coaster Bus, and thank you guys for watching my presentation.
Amazing. That was so cool. Oh my gosh. All right. So I think everyone, the first question.
Oh, I just want to thank, special thanks to my professor, Lee. She was amazing. She helped me through the whole process, because definitely making the music was definitely also my league. I've never made music before. Making the art, not an artist, but I created all the backgrounds. Everything that you see is what I made. So it's definitely it was a cool project, and I'm really thankful for her. So yes, any questions?
Well, again, I want to give you a big round of applause. I mean, I think, number one, I think you need to put the link to the game in the chat, because that's what everyone's going to be doing for the rest of the day who's in the session. I'm just saying it. So do people have questions for Denise? So we could take some time to kind of do some questions right now before we move on to our second presentation. So you can use the chat, and I'll keep an eye on the chat, but you can also just feel free to open your mic and give her a compliment, or, ask her a question directly. All right, here we go. All right, so one of the first questions I think I had asked is, how long did it take from like start to finish? So from conception to...
It took the entire semester. So I think it was probably fall of 2019, because I was actually supposed to present this last year at last year's conference. Because of COVID, I couldn't. But yeah, I think it took the entire semester.
Okay, so a whole semester. So that's about 3 months, give or take. Okay. Interestingly, so Tyler had commented that he's unaware of safety issues in Jamaica. I mean, I would argue that these safety issues exist here in the United States as well. But how long have you been here in the United States?
I left Jamaica to come here for college, so I've been here for 4 years, but I've also been here back and forth as well because my parents are always here sometimes, so I've definitely like know both of the best of both worlds, I guess.
Great. Let's see.
Um,
Yeah, everyone agrees that this is a great way to bring up conversations about road safety. Oh, Britannia asked, do you think you will do something like this in the future? Like, will you continue to develop?
I do have plans for the game. I actually want to expand on the different things you can do in the game. In terms of in the future, I'm mostly focused on like web development. So I'm the computer science. This is just like, like an extra project, but I'm definitely interested in developing the game more and like also advertising it out maybe. I don't know.
Cool. So Trinity, I don't know if you want to expand on your question. The last question that I see in the chat right now is, do you have a log on how long each part of the process took? So another way of thinking of that is, maybe what was the hardest part, easiest part?
I think the hardest part was the art. I'm not gonna lie. So it's very tedious, like creating like all the animation. Yes, the animation was the hardest thing. I've never animated before, and I had to create the frames for each thing. So when it plays, it actually shows like probably the wheels moving or the garbage bin going up and down. So that was probably the most hardest thing and most tedious thing. And of course, I don't really have any art backgrounds. Like making the shapes and trying to get it to look like what I'm trying to envision was kind of the hardest thing throughout the entire process. But in terms of like, I don't have any gatekeeping of like how long I really took. I probably should have done that. I wish I did it, but yeah.
Oh, that makes, I mean, no, I think I think it makes sense. I mean, did you ever think of yourself as ever doing something like this, or did your honors experience really push you in this direction?
So originally I actually started off as a game programming major, and then I swapped them. So I became a computer science major and a game programming minor. I've always had interest in making games and learning how like the process worked. But I kind of lost the question, I think.
I said, did you, so was this something that you like saw yourself doing, like developing like games like this and things?
Yeah, so yeah, I did see myself developing games. Now I don't really see it as like my main focus, but definitely as a side hobby.
Oh, that's great. And I would argue, I mean, I don't know, I'm going to throw this out to the audience. I mean, this is art, isn't it, guys? I mean, this is art, right? I mean, it's not art in like kind of the traditional sense of art, but this is like art. So, I mean, I think there's no doubt that this is an amazing, talent, creative, it's also educational. I mean, I would say that you need to contact the Ministry of, Transportation or whatever, whatever. I know there's lots of ministries in Jamaica, but I think that you should advertise this and go back to your schools, like, and have them talk to the kids about this, because I think questions about safety and, public safety and road safety, never too young to start with that.
I agree. Thank you so much.
Other questions for Denise? Or comments? We have a nice audience here, so feel free to open your mic. All right, I see lots of clapping hands. All right, well, maybe we'll come back after we hear our second presentation and just kind of debrief and have a conversation. So thank you so much for making your presentation, Denise.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. All right, so this brings us to our second presenter, Cierra Moranti from Monroe College. So Cierra, as we discussed, so Cierra is one of my students. So I'm going to share my screen with her presentation. So Cierra, you just tell me, you just guide me in terms of where you want me to go, okay? So I'm going to share my screen.
Okay.
Let's see if I can find the right, I'll just share my whole screen. All right, so we got about 1 million different tabs open. Sorry, guys. That's just my life. My life is 1 million tabs. Here we go. All right. So whenever you are ready, you can give your remarks, and I'm going to mute myself.
Okay. So I'm on the East Coast, so it's morning right now. But good morning, everybody. Or West Coast. I'm also scatterbrained right now. My name's Cierra Moranti, and I'm a hospitality management student. And my presentation is called "Liberty is the Root of Prosperity." When I first started this design, I was going back and forth between designs. I've actually made at least 3 different designs before actually choosing this one. Next slide. So as you guys can tell, there's some writing in this picture. There's Martin Luther King. There's also Linda Brown and a couple of the organizations from the civil rights movement, such as the Student Nonviolent Colored Committee, and then there's also the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. And what I was trying to grasp is that from this civil rights movement to now, time and events have continued to reoccur. No matter what time period it was, it's a reoccurring event. And so I started off with slavery and the civil rights movement. And that's where the dead tree comes from. Because that's an era that is considered over with. And then it trickles down to the full grown tree, which is current day. It has people as such as George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Michael Brown, Eric Gardner, Trayvon Martin, who actually was the first victim that started Black Lives Matter. And then I also have the 3 movements, which is Black Lives Matter, Take a Knee, and also Say Their Names, which Say Their Names started with Breonna Taylor. Next slide. So just an overview of what my presentation is going to cover is my inspiration, the representation, and the history, and of course, the Black Lives Matter timeline of all the victims that I can conjure up. My inspiration is my husband, LaShawn, which I don't know if he wants to come on camera or not. But the reason why my husband is my inspiration is because not only is he African American, but everything that he goes through, I witness. So some things are just very scary to witness. For example, with the current events that have been going on with racial injustice, and knowing that at any moment there can be consequences to even going outside. Like when we had the riots going on, it was a constant fear that something was going to end up happening just by walking out the door. So, of course, we live with that fear every day, and I want to get to a point where society works together to get rid of that fear, like to prevent families and our communities from being afraid of going outside and approaching a police officer, or going outside and going grocery shopping, or whatever the case may be, and always having people judging you just off of your race. Like, that shouldn't exist, but it does. And there's a line to be drawn at some point that we have to figure out a common ground where we can just say that's enough, and we need to start working towards equality for all races, not just African American or Latino or whites. It should just be all equality, and shouldn't be, oh, this race is inferior or this race is superior. It shouldn't be like that. So, next slide. So I put this quote here. It says, "There is no better than adversity. Every defeat, every heartbreak, every loss contains its own seed, its own lesson on how to improve your performance the next time," by Malcolm X. I chose this quote purposely because we live in a society that is full of adversity. And I believe that Malcolm X, when he said this, it was more of a way to bring attention to the fact that we should be able to face adversity head on, and know that if we end up failing, we get up and try again. And of course, we're stronger as a group, as a community, than we are as just one single individual. Next slide. So this slide is about the US history pertaining to African Americans. Of course, I'm pretty sure a majority of us know the history, but I decided to put it in a timeline just to have a background. And of course, there's a photo in the corner that is an empty hourglass, and it's just part of my description of recurring events throughout history and present time. So we start off with slavery and go from when slavery ended with the Emancipation Proclamation. And June 19th, of course, everybody knows that's the day that we celebrate, because that's when slavery officially ended in all states. And then there's also the 13th Amendment that prohibits slavery. And I put a note there saying except in the form of mass incarceration, because if you look into the 13th Amendment, it says it prohibits slavery, but it also allows there to be mass incarceration, and that in a way is a form of slavery, because you have prisoners that work without much of anything, and they live in poor conditions, and so it's even though the government says that the 13th Amendment prohibits slavery, there's no form of slavery, they don't exclude the fact that you can be stuck in a prison system, and even if you get out, you end up being able to get back into the prison system within a few months of even being out, because that's all you know. And then I also put the 14th Amendment, which granted United States citizenship and equal civil and legal rights to African Americans. This one had a lot of research on it. I end up actually spending a lot of time researching the amendments purposely because I wanted to get a deeper understanding of what rights African Americans originally had, and if they're even still considered valid in present day. Which, for the most part, we see cases that it is valid, and then we see cases that aren't valid. Like the United States government and the Supreme Court, they pick and choose their battles of whether or not they're going to allow certain things. And for example, when Trayvon Martin got killed, they took a long time to prosecute his killer. And even with Breonna Taylor and George Floyd, like they're taking a very long process to do anything about what happened during those events. And in some cases, that's really why a lot of riots have started and why a lot of protests have started, because there is no justice for them. Like we're still fighting for justice for them. And in many cases, it's unnerving to watch it on the news and in our communities where we have to continuously fight for these things when it should already be automatic. And then I have the Brown versus Board of Education of Topeka. It reversed the Plessy versus Ferguson separate but equal case. And it also ruled that racial segregation in public schools was unconstitutional. At that point, that's where everything took its turning point, because that was in 1952 to 1954. It was decided in 1954 that it was unconstitutional, and it implied that other parts of the community were also unconstitutional when it came to segregation. And that's also what started the civil rights movement. And the civil rights movement was from 1954 to 1985. And I put the Little Rock Nine, the Freedom Rides, and the March on Washington, and the three acts, which were the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act, and the Fair Housing Act. The Little Rock Nine was a group of kids that went to the high school in Little Rock, and they were escorted by the U.S. military. And they actually did the same thing that Linda Brown did, which was they fought for segregation in their community for public schools to be unconstitutional and to basically get rid of segregation in their community. The freedom rides were a bunch of people. When I first did the research for it, I only found a few people that were involved, and then once I started digging deeper, I ended up actually seeing there was tons more people than they actually list. And then they went from Alabama to, I forget what city they left off on, but they had their bus attacked, which is another reason why I feel like we need to prevent history from repeating itself even further, because I feel like we're leading into that again. Is like we're starting to have communities clash with each other, and again, I feel like there needs to be something done about that.
And I want to encourage you, Cierra. We're just because I don't have the chat in front of me, is just about 5 more minutes. So maybe this is a good way to transition into the current circumstances.
Okay. So this is the second to last slide. The Black Lives Matter movement started in 2012, and it started with Trayvon Martin, who was murdered just for wearing a hoodie in a community on his way back from the grocery store. And of course, there's Jordan Davis, Bernicia McBride. In 2014, there was Eric Garner, Josh Crawford, Michael Brown, Laquan McDonald, Tamir Rice. Eric Garner got a lot of attention through the athletic world, through NFL football, and also the NBA Lakers. I believe there was a few other teams that supported Eric Garner and actually came up with neat ways to be able to use their platforms to raise awareness. I know LeBron James sat here and made t-shirts that said, "I can't breathe." In 2015, there was Jamar Clark, Freddie Gray, and Walter Scott, which I didn't really get a chance to dig into them very much, but I was surprised to see that there's so many people that end up being victims of police brutality, and a lot of people don't even know that there's half of these people that were victims. And then I actually did a survey for not only my term paper in my honors class, but for this conference. And I asked my classmates, my family, my friends, and people in my community. And I'm actually in Oakland, California, where the Black Panther Party started. So a lot of people that I went up to, they were surprised I was doing a survey for this. And I found out that 33.3% African Americans, 16.7% Hispanic and Latinos, and 75% Caucasians were interested in the topic and wanted to know more about it. 100% of them knew the United States history in regards to African Americans, and 50% believed Black Lives Matter do not share the same liberties as their fellow citizens due to systemic racism, while the other 50% considered it to be a combination of factors such as systemic racism, also the slavery mentality, because a lot of African Americans have descendants in slavery, or they've been part of slavery, or etc. And then 50% believe in enforcing the promises of the United States Constitution, and 25% believe having a united front, and the other 25% believe in the above, plus having rights and protests will eventually lead us to equality.
Thank you, Cierra. So I'm just going to come back up to your image for a second so people can take one more look at it. Okay, which is here. So I know that the chat is going. I'm going to stop sharing my screen in a second. Can you just tell the group like what materials you used? This is hand drawn, right? So can you just tell them a little bit how you made the piece?
Of course. So when I first did this, I actually had a 20 by 20 canvas, and I realized that it was going to be way too big for what I wanted to do. So I went smaller and did 11 by 14, and I did a hand-drawn freelance piece, and I went in with pencil at first, and then I went back and did markers and inked it, and I also got gel pens and tried to put some kind of color in there. And then I also typed in the names and the organizations that I wanted to mention. And of course, I used the concept of trees because trees are known to have a long period of life. So the hourglass itself represents time. The frame of the hourglass was made of tree branches because I wanted it to represent that it's going to have a long lifespan of us dealing with the same issue. And inside, I did a dead tree because that presents the past, and then a full tree with leaves and everything showing the present.
Great, thank you. So I'm gonna stop sharing. I'm gonna come back into the room. Okay, so hey, I'm back. So all right, so we have a bunch of questions in the chat, or comments at least too. But one of the things that I'll make an observation, and then I'd love for people to also comment, because we do have a little bit of time left. There's about 30 minutes left in here, and I'm fine with us ending early if if we're done. But I also want to leave time for conversation. And then if we end early, you guys can always zoom into a different room during the session. But, you know, one of the things that I noticed between both presentations, while they're on very different issues, they're both issues that I think are important to people's, you know, wellness and societal wellness. You know, and I just, you know, I think that that's a great way, you know, a great commentary on how art can open windows into looking at these issues, and raising awareness for people, right? You know, in Denise's case, you know, raising, you know, awareness on road safety and traffic safety, and in Cierra's case, you know, continuing to raise awareness on systemic racism, you know, in the United States, both in the past and in the present. So Christina put into the chat hearing, so this is to, I think, Cierra. Hearing you say that there is repetition throughout history reminds me of my own presentation. I see you're passionate about this topic as I am. Your artwork is beautiful. Well done. So, so I don't know, Christina, if you want to share, I believe you're doing your presentation tomorrow morning, right? So you guys can feel free to also jump in and say something if you want. But I do think this conference has really asked us to contemplate a lot of important questions, you know, and I have seen that the issue of systemic racism and, you know, coming back to the idea that everybody's human is something that a lot of our presenters at this conference are grappling with. So any comments from the audience? Go ahead.
I have a couple of questions for Cierra. I thought, first of all, that the art piece is beautiful. And I'm not much of an art critic, so I don't, or much of an art historian at all, but, you know, sometimes when I'm looking at the hourglass, I always think of them as mirror images of each other, even though they're not, but like you can see how they're, you know, you have the dead tree on top and the live tree on the bottom, and yet they're still the same almost, like the shape of the things are the same. And I was just wondering if you had thought of that when you know, when you draw those parallels to what the past has been like and what the future is now, and whether they're really also different from each other. Is that something that you thought about when you conceptualized the piece?
Yes, actually, when I did this design, like I originally said, I did 3 different designs before I chose this one. And when I started drawing it, I realized that not a lot of things have changed from then. Of course, it also depends on who you ask how they feel about the changes that have happened. And in my community and a few communities in New York and New Jersey, I've had people come up to me and say that they feel like nothing really has changed except for the fact that we can walk around and use the same facilities. And so when I started drawing this, I wanted to show
She
that.
lost her mic there. But when you get it back, you can.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So when I first started drawing this, I wanted to show that from the 1960s to now, nothing really has changed. It's basically the same concept, the same fight that we've had to fight for years now. And we're still having to fight that same fight now. And so when I decided to do the hourglass, I knew that coming from a concept of parallelism and trying to show the mirror effect would have some kind of effect on my audience, because it would show that it's the same tree, just different concepts, like one's dead and one's not.
That's really cool. And actually, when you're talking about the differences between the past and the present, I was thinking about the survey that you did, and I was wondering, did you look at the responses to the question about whether Black lives share the same liberties? Did you break that down by race? Because I saw you had, you know, multiple races represented in the people that you asked. So I wonder if you took a look at that and whether we would see a difference, in terms of what perhaps white people might say about the present versus people of other races.
So my survey, I did it through Google Forms, and it actually broke it up for me, and it showed the percentage and also the ethnic groups that responded and what their responses were. And 75% were Caucasian, which that was mainly my friends and family, and maybe a couple of groups from my local community. And compared to the African American and Latino side of it, and then the Caucasian side, Caucasians saw that they feel like we've had a lot of progress, and of course, not a lot of people pay attention to the African American communities. In fact, the community that I'm in is actually getting gentrified. So a lot of people are getting pushed out of their homes. And so when you ask different ethnic groups, it just depends on what they're exposed to. Like if they've lived in a community that has a large African American population, or a community that doesn't have much of anything, their answers are going to be different based off of their exposure. And when it came to that question in particular, a lot of people were saying that they believe that we've made progress, while the other half sat here and said they feel like we're still trying to make the same progress that we were in 1964.
Great. Thank you, Cierra.
Thank you.
No problem.
All right. Any other questions or comments for either Cierra or Denise? Yeah, I mean, again, I think that they're very different. They were very different presentations, but both thought-provoking. Go ahead, Doctor.
I saved all my comments and questions for the end. I'm sorry. I just had another question for Denise. First of all, that was really a lot of fun. And I'm privileged because I got to experience it last semester too. So I'm glad I got to see it again. But when thinking about designing games around social issues and things like that, what's the next one? Like if you could design another game or the next one social issue, like what would you want to tackle? I know I'm putting you on the spot there a little bit, but is there anything that's on your mind?
Honestly, I haven't really thought about it. I guess one, I'm trying to think like more Caribbean wise. Probably another issue is like education and literacy. Literacy is a great problem, like especially in areas that are not, I guess, poor areas that don't have the privilege of like going to school, having simple things like textbooks or even school shoes to go to school. Because in Jamaica you have to wear a uniform. So trying to get a uniform, trying to get a books, and then traveling. Like some people live in areas that are just unaccessible, especially, and Wi-Fi is not available in those areas, and so that's something that's really hard. So I think I will probably make a game surrounding that issue. Like
that'd be really cool. You could do like a reading game or something like that. Where they're like the game. Like my son plays them all the time. They're like you teach your kid how to read by sounding out words and stuff like that, but it's all game based. That's really cool. That'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah. Thank you for that question. I didn't think about it before.
Oh, that was I love that question. let's see, something focused on helping the poor. Okay, so maybe Zariel put that in the chat. Maybe she's feeling inspired after seeing our keynote speakers talk, about raising awareness on homelessness and issues of poverty. See, I'm a mind reader on top of everything else. All right, well, if there's no other comments or questions, we can end a little bit early this session. I'll just make a couple of announcements. So to both Denise and Cierra, probably by tomorrow, I believe what ends up happening is that the link that you guys click to come into the session will then be a link to the recording. And then eventually NRHC is going to be uploading all of these Zoom recordings to their YouTube channel. So there will eventually be like a permanent like link that you could share with people who couldn't be in the room today. So stay tuned for that. The other thing is there's one more presentation session today, session 4, which begins at 2:30. So you can either take a little bit of a Zoom break, or you can go check out the conference portal and find another room that you want to jump into for the last 20 minutes of today's session. This evening at 5:15, I think it is, there is a roundtable discussion with our regional partners in the South. So Cierra, you would probably be very interested in that one. So would Christina. And I just call out those two since I know that their topics have revolved around, racial justice and diversity. But that's what that roundtable talk is about at 5:15 in the Southern region. And then for all the student participants, there is an 8 o'clock Zoom dance party. So try and Zoom in. I've never been to a Zoom dance party before, but there's a first time for everything, right? So I hope that you guys are really enjoying the conference. And don't forget, tomorrow morning too, there is a session 5. And there's our closing and award ceremony. So we'd love to have as many people come as possible. But both Denise and Cierra did a really nice job today. It is not easy to present, even in a Zoom session. I think there's always nerves involved and everything, but you both came up with, really innovative topics, really great pieces. And that reminds me, while I'm saying that, see stream of thought. Don't forget, if you're interested, and I think both Denise and Cierra would be great candidates for our undergraduate journal, Illuminate. So I just put the link to Illuminate in the chat. You can have your art screenshots and link to your game through the Illuminate website if it's accepted. So definitely consider that, as all the students who are here can consider submitting to Illuminate. But I want to thank everyone for joining us today. I'm going to stop the recording here, and